Okay, yeah, I know. Late to the party as always. Let's just pretend that didn't happen. If you already know what's going on, hi. To everyone else, welcome to One Villainous Scene, a celebration of the evil, wicked, and downright despicable moments across films, games, comics, and all forms of media that let us know, yeah, that right there is a villain. If you've watched any of the other content creators in this playlist and wanted to say,
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
then here's an open invitation to make that first video on a particular villainous moment that stood out for you. Whatever medium you pick, be sure to send your submission to Now2V Movies to be part of the collaboration and find some new creators along the way. Now, without further ado, let us dive in. There are a multitude of elements that make up a good story. Its setting, the conflict, maybe its pace. But one that always stands out is the villain. Whether bad, misunderstood, or just plain bad, they are often the ones who create the inciting incident, who push the main characters into their journeys, and sometimes they can be the main attraction themselves. Literally every Batman movie pre-2005, the villains got top billing on the poster, they got the iconic lines, and most of all, they were the ones people remembered most after the credits rolled. I mean, when you think about it, the most universal symbols in our culture are the ones that are the most easily identifiable. People will remember the likes of the Wicked Witch, Darth Vader, or Dio Brando for their presence and actions, which speak volumes about who they are as individuals, as well as the iconic displays of pure cathartic villainy. But at the same time, to boil the archetype down to just being evil does a disservice to what these characters can be. Much like any malleable material, it can be molded into different styles and subject to different perspectives. Because not everyone is made up of being just good or bad. The most complicated are the ones who hover between the two binaries without fully committing to one side. With this in mind, that's why I'm going to be talking about How to Train Your Dragon. By conventional screenwriting logic, this thing right here is the endgame villain. It's a fundamental part of the hero's journey that slaying the dragon, quite literally in this case, results in the chaos being stopped and peace being established in the old world. But something happened on my recent rewatch, something I've always thought about but couldn't really put into words. The villain of How to Train Your Dragon isn't the Red Death. It's not the massive monster that breathes fire at the Viking army. It's the one who commanded the invasion and led one side to fight another. It's Stoic. His words and actions do more damage and change to the story than any of the supposed enemies his Viking culture calls monsters. But first, we need a backup. Yeah, back like a few dozen scenes. Let's see here.
Oh, yeah. Many things, Hiccup. But a dragon killer is not one of them.
Who is this person? Like, who is Stoic? There's a multitude of ways this can be shown, through his design, Jared Butler's commanding voice, maybe it's the shape of his thick beard, but in my opinion, it all comes down to that first image we see of him. In the midst of a raid on the island of Berk, we get a glimpse of a war between two separate species, one of them being us, and the other being, well...
dragons.
Our shot starts here. The camera follows our main character Hiccup from right to left, which is the traditional westward approach of reading, when suddenly, in a flash of fire, both the camera and Hiccup are jerked back by a large figure who saves him, but then reprimands him for his carelessness. This man then proceeds to yeet Hiccup out of the frame to the right, reinforcing their physical difference along with their positions within this society. And in another instance of motivated camera movement, the composition changes from a wide shot to a low-angle close-up within the same frame, without cutting. As the music swells, we get narration in the third person about how
That's Stoic the Vast, chief of the tribe. They say that when he was a baby, he popped a dragon's head clean off of its shoulders. Do I believe it? Yes, I do.
Everything is designed to give us the indication that he is courageous, headstrong, and also kinda dangerous, and all that for the 15-second exchange. Using all the tools of the cinematic language like camera movement, editing, as well as composition, it gives us all the information we need to know about this one person. This might sound small, but it's this visual detail that will go on to define every encounter between Hiccup and Stoic to follow. He's the ideal man of action, a leader who inspires others to follow in his massive footsteps. And in simple terms, Hiccup can't fill those footsteps because he is not his father. Much like all children, he does inherit similar traits, but it is impossible to fill that exact same mold. The visual language all plays a part in having Stoic be the most powerful person in the room. From low-angle POVs to medium two-shots, the natural progression from this scene makes us understand how one-sided every encounter feels. Now, you could see many of these scenes as what they are, a man trying to connect with his son, and there may not be any malicious intent behind his actions, but expecting his son to fit into the same uber male standard is ultimately what sets Hiccup on his own journey to become his own man. It's this back and forth conflict which leads us to the scene in question. The last 62 minutes of build-up have been the setup to get us to the first real moment of these two characters talking to each other. Not trying to understand one's point of view or awkward silences, just pure honesty, because after all this, here is the point of no return, and all that resentment and growing disappointment finally kick in at the Grand Hall. The scene comes right after this.
I'm not one of them.
Stop the fight.
No! I need you all to see this. They're not what we think they are.
I said stop the fight!
After the truth has been revealed, having disowned tradition and their way of life, Hiccup is at his most vulnerable stage. Without Toothless, he's essentially by himself. While Stoic has reached his boiling point, his pace is fast and aggressive as he just speaks on what just happened. His arrogant strong-headedness continues to prevail, dismissing everything his son says, until, finally, the two start talking.
They killed hundreds of us!
And we've killed thousands of them!
The lighting plays a big part in how the two polar opposites clash with each other, as the room they are in is covered in harsh shadows, with the only light source coming from outside, which gives this tense atmosphere as if only one side is getting through to another, until eventually it does. There's even a description from the screenplay that perfectly sums up the conflict in the room itself through lighting. He paces against a backdrop of shadowy tapestries and carved pillars, a legacy of heroes, all peering down in angered judgment. Another element that stands out in this scene in contrast to the rest of the film is the lack of John Powell's score. We're left with the echo and reverb in a large empty room that punctuate every line delivery, letting the moment sink in, right up until the one moment that the truth slips out.
Dad, it's a dragon like
Their
you've never...
island! So you've been to the nest.
Did I say nest?
How did you find it?
But no, I didn't. Toothless did. Only a dragon can find the island.
As Stoic marches out, the camera follows him, Hiccup grows more out of focus, and we hit the crescendo that solidifies this one villainous scene.
It's not what you think. You don't know what you're up against. It's like nothing you've ever seen. Dad, please. I promise you can't win this one. Dad, no. For once in your life, would you please just listen to me?
You throwing your lot in with them. You're not a Viking. You're not my son.
Do you want to know the bit that always gets me? It's when he has that little half faint outside, as if the full impact of what he's just done is sunk in. It's the lowest point for both characters, but it's also one of the defining moments of the trilogy, because some of its best moments aren't in the fantastical settings or the action. It's when they hit upon something real and tangible. The disconnect between generations, and us versus them mentality, and the inability to bridge that gap is something that almost anyone can relate to. When you're in your adolescence, it can be so hard to try and understand a different perspective. But by pushing past this lowest point, it's what leads to the eventual redemption and solidification of their bond, and it's why this one villainous scene is the first time both Stoic and Hiccup are honest with each other, and it's why the real catharsis is reached. Heck, the point of a villain is to push the story forward. So maybe they aren't always as black and white as we put them out to be. Sometimes they're just human, sometimes they're just normal, sometimes they're just a dad struggling to connect with their son, which is something I think most people can connect to. But that's a story for another day. Thanks for watching, and be sure to watch the other entries in the playlist for some more villainous scenes.